Welcome to Crafty Hints. I'm Chantel. Wow, let's do some Easter DIYs. These Easter DIYs are budget friendly. Here is my social media. Let's get crafty. For our first one, I found this sign at the Dollar Tree and I thought it was adorable. The polka dots don't quite fit into my decor, so that's all right. We're going to fix that. So I took my heat gun, which you could use your blow dryer as well, and just heated it up so that it would come off of that glue. Next, I flipped it over and then just took a little sandpaper where the tag had been. Now on the back, I'll be able to paint it with this Waverly chalk paint. I used the color Pool and gave this a once over. So super easy there, just a little bit of painting and we're good to go. Next, I wanted to age this metal just a little bit. It's bright and shiny, so I used some brushed metal decor art paint, folk art paint, I apologize, and gave that just a little bit here and there, mostly a once over just to take off a little bit of that shine. I think that just adding your own little hints to some of Dollar Tree's items just makes them so much prettier. I also used Ceramcoat Select metallic finish and, gave that just another hue. So I think that mixing these metals just gave it a pretty color. I then blended a little bit of just black acrylic paint with the metallic. This just is aging it a little bit. So again, it's not light and bright. I'm going to use that sign and make it kind of like boards. As you'll see, they're kind of staggered like boards. So I want this to be like it's been out in the weather for just a little bit. Giving this just a little bit more in the edges there. With that brushed metal, I wanted to add a little bit of black to that also. So again, just play with it until it looks right to you. Obviously, there is no perfect until it looks perfect to you. And in the leaves on this Easter blessing, it has some indents. So you could go in with a little brush if you wanted to and, add a little black. Okay, going back to the sign, see what I mean about the edges? It looks like boards kind of bonded together to make a sign. So now I'm dry brushing with that Plaster chalk paint. Just giving it the lightest touch, going back and forth like the wood grain would. Just tapping it barely in that paint. And it gives it just a nice aged wood, kind of like that pink paint has chipped, or that blue paint has chipped. Now I want to go along where those boards are, and I'm going to just take a paintbrush and just go along there so that it makes those boards stand out just a little bit better. So I just went along with a little bit of this Pool. I decided to mix it with just a dab of the black that's there. That way we've got kind of a gray. So it will just make it pop out just a little bit. See how it's kind of faint? I want, them to be a little bit faint so it's not boom, we've got boards here. We want it just barely there so that your eye catches it like it's boards. Now, metal won't just bond to the board. So I glued those beads on there with some E6000. Now I can use my hot glue right on those beads and it will bond to the board. So metal to the board, it doesn't like it because it doesn't like that heat gun. So this way I can still use my glue gun. This also raises it off the board just a little bit. It gives it some nice dimension. Now, any of those little heat strings or anything like that that you have sticking out, you can take your blow dryer or heat gun over it and it'll just take those away. And if you see any little spots, use your toothpick. Isn't that pretty? My lighting in my bathroom, I'm sorry, isn't the best to really catch those colors, but doesn't it look like boards, you know, and then that sign popping off of it? It's our Easter DIY collab, and our host this month is Amanda from 6 Kids and a Glue Gun and Brenda from Rustic and Lace DIY. Please check out their channels. These ladies are so talented. There'll also be a playlist below, so you can go check that out. And once you click on the playlist, it'll just go from one Easter DIY to the next. You will not be disappointed when you see the talent of all of our friends that have joined us. I wanted to share this one with you again. I want to show you here that not all tumbling tower blocks are exactly the same size. I'll throw in a couple packages and sometimes they're a little bit different. So just be mindful of that as you're choosing your blocks. So I took 6 blocks and glued them in pairs of 2 vertically. And just a little bit of wood glue. With this raw wood, it bonds it so much better than hot glue would. And now I'll just put a little bit on the top and I'm going to stack these 4 together. And now I'm going to go with 2 horizontally, actually 4, and then I stack those the other way. Now I have these little pit berries that are on a little bit of like jute twine and wire, and I thought that would make the wreath that was the wreath of, or the crown of thorns that was placed on Jesus' head when he was crucified. Gosh, this really made me stop and reflect on this. I didn't like the pit berries. They were a little bit thicker than I thought the thorns would be. So I grabbed this, I think it was rosemary from Walmart from last year, and I painted that in truffle and then glued these on. So just a little bit of glue and placing those around it, just taking off little snips of it. That truffle matched the crown pretty well. And just continuing around if you want them on both sides or however you feel this looks best. But I wanted to make sure it actually looked like what it probably should. Now I took a wet wipe and took some antique wax and went over the cross. Just gave it a little bit of darker. Now it's an old rugged cross, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect. And I just went on both sides of this, and you can definitely tell some of these blocks are sanded more than others. So be mindful of that when you're choosing your blocks as well. Or you might want to just give them a light sanding. I did put on a glove there. I tend to find that antique wax gets all under my fingernails. I used the sign from Thanksgiving and gave it a coat of truffle on the back. And now I took 2 tumbling tower blocks, had glued 2 together and painted those, and then one of those little tiny cube blocks and painted that in truffle. Once this was dry, I gave it some hot glue, of course, and now I'm going to attach the cross. Just attaching it to the base of the 2 blocks, and then it has support from the back with that little mini block. Once that cooled, I glued the bottom and will attach it to my other base. I thought this gave it a nice finished look to it. Now, I had this old t-shirt. Now, they mocked Jesus when they put him on the cross, and, you know, purple was a sign of royalty back then. And so they gave him a robe in purple. And so this is to represent that. So I just folded it over, glued it so it had a nice finished edge, and then gave it a little bit of hot glue. And so my seam didn't show. I just gave it a little bit of a twist so the seam's on the back, and glued that down. Now there, I just glued on the crown of thorns. So I wanted to represent the true meaning of Easter also. Oh, I think this turned out so pretty. I should have flipped those to Easter also for this picture, but I think, you know, it is part of spring. I found these little wood cutouts at the Dollar Tree, and I thought they were adorable. Now, if you remember, I did a little garland for my window for Valentine's Day, and I thought, oh my goodness, I gotta do one for Easter now. So took that plaster chalk paint, gave them a once over. Now remember, if you're still going to be doing other projects, fold that saran wrap over the top of your paint. That'll keep it from drying out. Now I took my painter's tape, cut it in half, and I'm going right along the bottom. This will give me a nice straight line to line up my stickers that I'm going to add to them. I'll be spelling out Happy Easter. I also painted the bunnies in that plaster at the same time. So getting those on there, and I want to press them down nice and tight. You need to make sure that that plaster paint is absolutely dry. We don't want the adhesive from the letters to get too stuck to it. And sometimes if it's just a little bit damp, it grabs the adhesive. Okay, so what we're going to be doing once we get these all laid out is we're going to paint over the top. So as you put them on there, make sure you get your edges nice and crisp and you don't have any little bubbles. It goes pretty easy and pretty smoothly. So just continue on. I just cut enough to go across and mix whatever colors you need. Maize was a little bit bright for me, so I added a little bit of plaster to it. Kind of gave it a little mix, and now I'm just going right over the top, but not too thick. And you also want to stay in one direction. Don't go back and forth. And I'll end up giving these 2 coats. And chalk paint does work best with this because the acrylic, if you just use an acrylic paint, it's a little bit wet and, you know, those stickers are paper. If you use a vinyl stickers, that might be just fine. Okay, I'm going to go through with 3 colors I chose. I had the maize with a little plaster, the pool, and celery. Now, I wanted to show you this fun little egg idea. I just painted it. That celery and the maize and showing you painting the edges. But now I crinkled up some plastic wrap and now I'm dabbing it in some of that plaster after the celery and the maize dried on that little egg. And I'm just dabbing it on top. It'll give it a neat little texture. kind of like rag painting. You know, if you've ever done that before, that's kind of fun, but it has just a neat texture. So this could be a separate project all on its own. I did touch up that spot that didn't have plaster where I had put the tape, but just a fun little thing. I thought I might include it in the center of the swag. Now I'm just taking these paper piecing tools or weeding tools and lightly just getting the edge of that sticker up. And you can see these paper stickers don't always come up perfect. I did find that the bigger ended one worked better. So these do come in a 2-pack. So just carry on with all of your stickers, peeling that up, just being careful not to dig too deep and to get to that plaster paint. But isn't that a nice way to reverse stencil? All right, I'm going in now with, if you've seen those erasers in the crafter's square, mine ended up getting attacked by my daughter's dog, but it just takes off any extra adhesive you have there. And I'm just using my dotting tool and making a couple dots on the top. You can make these Easter eggs however you would like so that it fits your garland. Now I'm just putting it on this, it's actually a yarn, but feels more like a, I guess, string. I found that, you know, in the Crafter's Square as well at the Dollar Tree. Now, I waste not, want not. I'm going to use that as my guide. I cut it a little bit bigger than in half. And in some places, I'll use a bigger one. And in some places, I use a smaller. So now I'm going to the smaller. I use bigger from the center. And now just smaller in between my letters. But it just makes them consistent. Just an easy way to line those up. Isn't that fun? I think that this just turns out so cute. A quick and easy, cute way to dress up your window or your mantle or your coffee bar. Just so fun and inexpensive. Now I'm just going to put my little bunnies on the end here. In the middle of March, I'm going to do a bunny collab. So if you're all about the Easter bunny, I'm going to do a bunny collab. That will be fun. Amanda from 6 Kids and a Glue Gun is hosting that. Isn't this adorable? Now don't forget, down in the description box, and I'll pin it in the comments as well, there will be the playlist to go visit all of these lovely crafters. It was so long and hard to see in my window. I'll show it in my window, but this gives you a better idea on the table. I'm sorry, with the time of day, it's kind of hard to see this, but I wanted to show it on my window. Thank you so much for joining me. I do hope that you take some time for yourself to craft. It can be so therapeutic. These are a couple other DIYs that you might enjoy. Have a blessed day and happy Easter.